Kagame cannot claim to go to defend Tutsis of other nations when in fact the Tutsis in his own country are suffering. And yeah, I was just saying that Kagame has made himself the defender and protector of Tutsis in the region, in the world, when in fact Rwandans, including the Tutsis and the Hutus and Twas in his own country, are suffering. So you don't have to show your empathy and your compassion to other people when in your own country you are doing precisely the same things that you are accusing other people, in this case, accusing Congo, accusing President Tshisekedi. Of course, Victor Ingabire would beat Kagame by far in a presidential election.
I believe that anybody from opposition parties will beat him if there is a free and fair election in one.
And especially if you, it's not even that anybody would beat him, but some person, some citizen of Rwanda who has the concerns of Rwandan people at heart, who wants to rectify all this damage that Kagame has imposed on the population of Rwanda and now imposes on the population of the region. Kagame has been involved in attempts to regime change in Burundi, if you might remember, in 2015, right? Kagame has engaged in regime change in Democratic Republic of Congo. He has removed one president, assassinated the second one. And right now, he has never abandoned.
He tried even a regime change in Uganda. He tried.
I was coming to that.
Yes.
So literally, Kagame has quarreled or fought literally every country in the region, even those that he has not fought, like Tanzania. You remember when Kagame said that he was itching to teach Kikwete, then President Kikwete, a lesson he will never forget. So why did the East African force fail? And under what circumstances would this? It's kind of a preemptive warning or advice one would give to the SADC force, the South Africans and the Tanzanians, that unless you link what is happening in the eastern part of Congo to what is happening in Rwanda and treat them accordingly, you are bound to fail.
Dear listeners, this is the English service of Radio Television Ishakwe, the voice of Ishakwe Rwanda Freedom Movement, a Rwandan opposition organization in exile. We are broadcasting from Washington, D.C. in the U.S., United States of America. This program is brought to you by Sixbert Musangamfura, and our guest today is Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa. Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sixbert.
Yeah, thank you and welcome. Today is the 4th day of March 2024. Our broadcast in English will be every Monday at 3 p.m. Washington, D.C. Our listeners are wondering why? Why now? Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa, what's your take on that?
Well, thank you very much. A very good question indeed. But I would like to welcome the listeners who are listening for the first time. Hopefully this won't be the last time they are listening to this program. But to answer your question, we've decided to start this English service of our radio because there are so many people who are interested in what is going on in our country, Rwanda, and also interested in Rwanda's environment, that is the neighboring country, which often is referred to as the Great Lakes region. I think the RPF government has been, is now close to 30 years in power, since 1994. And I think our region, the Great Lakes region of Eastern Central Africa, has never faced a crisis of this proportion, in which Rwanda is attempting to stand up against the entire region and continuing to foment conflict and war, which have been going on for almost 3 decades. But Rwandans, often we think that we are the only ones concerned with our crisis, with our own problems. But as recent history has shown, there are so many other people interested in the problems of Rwanda, simply because being a neighborhood is like one house is on fire, the neighboring houses, of course, catch fire. And Rwanda has become a notorious exporter of conflict in the region. And in turn, of course, what happens in the region affects Rwanda, affects us as citizens of Rwanda, affect our country. So it's right and fitting that we should also be making an attempt to inform the world, to educate the world about what is going on in Rwanda and the region. We hope that in future, hopefully, we may be able to start a Swahili service, because predominantly most citizens of East Africa and Central Africa are able to communicate in Swahili, and maybe Sixbert and company, who are very proficient in French, one day in the future, it's our dream, we shall be able to communicate in French as well. But I think for now, we are going to be concentrating on broadcasting in Kinyarwanda, our native language, as well as English, to inform not only the region, but also the broader international community.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And today we are talking about the situation in the Eastern Congo, the Eastern of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we are talking about General Kagame's provocations. And we believe that they will trigger a regional war. The title of our talk today is General Kagame's provocations will trigger a regional war. Already the war is there, but still undercover. Many countries are deploying troops. General Kagame is taking off gloves, taking the stakes very high. I guess you have read the latest letter of Rwanda Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta to the African Union Secretary General, that denotes both a deep fear of the risk for his regime, for Kagame's regime, on the one hand, and a threat of a worsening of the situation, which could lead to open regional war on the other hand. We are going to comment this letter and talk about the implications of the Rwandan stand in this crisis in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. This letter is following another one that was addressed to the UN Security Council. Actually, the letter is talking about that, and we will come back to this letter, and so our listeners could understand what we are talking about. To those who have joined us right now, this is the English service of radio television Ishakwe, the voice of Ishakwe, Rwanda Freedom Movement, a Rwandan opposition organization in exile. We are broadcasting from Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, and this program is brought to you by Sixbert Musangamfura, and our guest today is Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa. I was talking about the letter that was addressed by the Rwandan Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta to the letter is dated 3rd of March 2024 at Kigali. And the letter was addressed to His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa. The letter is showing the position of the government of Rwanda. It starts like this. The government of Rwanda has learned about the planned virtual meeting scheduled on 4th March 2024 of the Peace and Security Council, PSC, of the African Union to consider the situation in Eastern DRC and the deployment of the SADC mission in the DRC, and that forces SAMI DRC. The minister continues like this. The government of Rwanda also learned with great concern that one of the objectives of the meeting is to endorse the deployment of SAMI DRC and assess possible support that the African Union and other strategic partners could extend to that force. Since Rwanda is not invited to participate, we request that the Minister for Foreign Affairs who is speaking, we request that the following points be conveyed to the session. Shortly, the letter is talking about the opposition of Rwanda to any initiative that is supporting peace enforcing missions in the eastern region of the Republic of the Democratic of Congo, alleging that those peace enforcing forces are one-sided, that those forces are against M23, that is supported by Rwanda, and that has been proven by all Rwandan key partners, including the United States of America and even France, that is a key partner of Rwanda in Mozambique. Rwanda has been denying the fact that it has deployed troops in the Eastern Congo, but everybody, all observers are anonymously saying that they have proof that Rwanda has deployed troops in the Eastern Democratic of Congo. And on our side, we are 100% sure that Rwanda has deployed troops in the Eastern Democratic of the Republic of Congo. And we believe that the fact that the government of Rwanda is opposed to any initiative that is supposed to enforce peace, we believe that the reason is that Rwanda is deeply involved in that crisis. I would like Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa to comment on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sixbert. Thank you for inviting me to this conversation. Initially, we had actually planned to have this maiden broadcast, not knowing that this letter would simply fall on our laps today. This was actually accidental. We just saw it this morning, and we thought that we should comment on it. The letter itself is a manifestation of a deep crisis. 30 years later, since the Civil War of 94 and the genocide of 1994, General Kagame's regime faces multiple and multidimensional crises that are of his own making or the own making of the organization that he led into military victory in 1994. In short, as the English would say, this crisis is a self-inflicted wound. I had an opportunity to go through the letter very quickly before this program. And on a personal note, it reminds me the role I used to have when I used to belong to the Rwandese Patriotic Front. There are many people who were born in 1994 and thereafter who might not be conversant with the history of RPF, but during the crisis of 1994, I was its Secretary General. I was the Secretary General of RPF. And thereafter, I was Rwanda's ambassador to the United States. And thereafter, I was President Kagame's chief of staff, director de cabinet, as they call it in French, umuyobozi mukuru w'ibiro bya perezida, as they say it in Kinyarwanda. Now, in these multiple positions I held, because I had served RPF as one of the diplomats, the 3 diplomats who served RPF during the Civil War, namely Patrick Mazimhaka, who was our lead, the late Patrick Mazimhaka, the late Dr. Jacques Ruhozagara, and myself. And it occurs to me that throughout my service to RPF and the country, I've always had the misfortune of being the one often to write letters of this nature. So I kind of sympathize with Minister Biruta, because when Kagame says we have to protest, or we have to write, or we have to deny, or we have to distort whatever facts that there might be, it always falls, of course, on somebody to be able to articulate some of these lies, these distortions, and these deceptions. For people who are young, who are about 30 years old as RPF's rule, they may not be very familiar that Rwanda has been perpetually at war. Maybe they are, but they may not be able exactly to understand why, since 1996, since that time, Rwanda has been in the Congo perpetually, either in a full-fledged war, as it happened in 96, 97, or later on during the crisis that toppled President Mobutu of the country that was then called Zaire, or in 98, another second war that took place, this side against the very person that Rwanda or General Kagame had participated in installing in power, that is Laurent Kabila, and the same person that the same president of Congo that, of course, Kagame was very much involved in assassinating. And thereafter, Rwanda has been in the Congo multiple times in different guises, under different rebel groups that sometimes are associated with the ethnic Tutsi in Congo, called the Banyamulenge, and people who are familiar with this, both in the region and the international community, are very familiar with what happened after the Second Congo War, and then in 2013 when M23 captured, Goma, and was forced to abandon Goma, first because the international outcry drove this force out of Goma, and thereafter it has existed in various forms. And the question that people should be asking themselves is, or which most often people ask themselves is, why is Rwanda in the Congo all the time? And various reasons have been given, and various reports, countless reports by the United Nations group of experts, showing how the presence of Rwanda's troops and the rebel groups, proxy forces it supports, have something to do with the economic benefits that Rwanda has got from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So there are economic reasons for it being there. And I was reading through this letter very quickly, and I could see that, General Kagame's regime is always fond of distorting history, because it says the problem in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo started in 1994 but then it gives the causes as other people. It doesn't mention itself. So other people have always caused the problems of Congo, especially in its eastern part. And it goes on to say that when you read between lines, it would be justifying its presence as trying to defend the Tutsi of Congo. And it tries to justify its presence as defending itself against the genocidal forces of FDRL. 30 years later, almost to count. And it's there, as Minister Biruta argues in this letter, because Congo and Burundi are working with these genocidal forces, because the genocidal forces have exported the genocidal ideology in Congo, and also because Congo, in the person of the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, President Tshisekedi, and the president of Burundi, have committed themselves publicly, that's what they say publicly, to regime change in Rwanda. That's how Biruta argues in this letter. He does not talk about the economic exploitation, the illegal exploitation of natural resources of Congo. It does not talk about how Rwanda since 1996 has sponsored rebellion in Congo, how it has engaged in a regime change, the first one under Mobutu, and the second one, of course, whose leader was assassinated because of General Kagame's plans, that whoever does not work with him, whoever does not believe in his policies, that person is an enemy and that person must die. So it does not talk about all these issues. Now, if you look at, as you remember, Sixbert, this is not the first time that Rwanda has had to face multiple countries in the Democratic Republic of Congo, countries that are supporting Congo against Kagame's actions in the Congo. If you remember, at one point in that war, which was called the Second Africa War, I don't remember if that's how it was called, but it was at one point there were about 9 countries fighting in the Congo.
Actually, they call this the African World War. I think so.
The African World War, something like that.
Yeah.
You remember there was a time Rwanda was fighting Zimbabwe, fighting Angola, fighting Namibia. That was the time after the assassination of, after General Kagame assassinated Laurent Kabila. These countries decided to support the government that succeeded, the government that ultimately, of course, was led by the son, Joseph Kabila. And you remember that was a very vicious war that attracted many countries, became a very vicious regional war. And not surprisingly, in both the first Congo War, which toppled the dictator, President Mobutu, Rwanda could have argued, and many of us believed genuinely, that Rwanda had a stake in trying to contain the forces, the genocidal forces that had relocated to Zaire at that time. But when it was succeeded by the Second Congo War, and there was an ambassador in Washington at that time, the first Congo and the second Congo found me in Washington, D.C. I was Rwanda's ambassador. And in both cases, I was the one to go to State Department and vehemently deny that Rwanda is involved in the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I remember the people I was dealing with at that time, like the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Susan Rice. She used to joke and say, Theogene, you know that we know much, sometimes we know much more than you do. And we know that you are in the Congo. And one time, when I picked a newspaper in Washington, D.C., it quoted having had an interview with Kagame, and Kagame had bragged the usual in victory, some of these military victories or conquests of his. He said, well, we are the ones who removed Mobutu. We are the ones who fought in Congo. And by the way, that operation was led by middle rank officers. That's how it was quoted in Washington, D.C. paper, Washington Post. And in the Second War, because of the haphazard nature of how that war began, having been misled by his officers, the likes of James Kabarebe and others, Rwanda's troops were in big, big trouble, if you might recall. And at one point, literally, Kagame would send messages to me to go and plead with the Americans so that the Americans could intercede with the Angolans so that they essentially do not annihilate, do not completely destroy our forces that were just there miserable in Kitona. Every night, there was a time every night, I didn't even go to the office. I would go to Susan Rice's house to plead so that the Americans can intercede with the Angolans and the Angolans do not destroy. Of course, I'm not surprised sometimes these days when I hear the likes of
But
James
you did
Kabarebe.
it. You succeeded, because that time I remember that Angola did not annihilate actually the troops of Kagame, and they gave actually a
Yes.
free passage so they could go back to Rwanda. That time, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to show that if we are now in a crisis, as shown by this letter, it's both shows a crisis, but it also shows a lot of fear, a lot of veiled threats. It's going to escalate. It has already escalated. By the time you have a conflict
before we
that has,
go,
yes.
before we talk more about this later, there is a point I'd like to underline here, and normally people say that Rwanda is in the Congo because of economic exploitation. You have been General Kagame's chief of staff. I know you have been observing very closely the situation in Rwanda. Did the first invasion of Congo in 1996 bring economic gains to Kagame's Rwanda that time? Do you think that the people who say that are right?
Of course. Of course. You don't need to be even an expert or wait for the group of experts and the multiple groups that have talked about illegal exploitation of resources by Rwanda. You just have to look at Rwanda's exports that they brag about. They export quota, they export gold, they export diamonds. I think they have said recently that, in fact, maybe let me not say something that is not factual, but I remember the figure is very high, that their exports of gold have almost reached $1 billion for this year. I'm not so sure. So this is something that can be
That's
fact-checked.
correct. That's correct. Yeah, the exports of minerals has reached $1 billion.
Yes, yes. This is Rwanda. And Sixbert, you know Rwanda more than I do. You know that country because you've lived in Rwanda much longer than myself. I always tell people that I've only lived in Rwanda for a total of about 6 years in my entire life. And so, and you only need to look at the skyline of Kigali, because to Kagame and his people, his clique of people who run military people and a few other people who run Rwanda, once bragged recent, I think it was General Kagame who bragged that, okay, if our resources have built the things we've built here, why hasn't Congo been able to use its resources to build the same? Of course, that is like a roundabout kind of argument, because if you are there disrupting Congo and you're not the only one, because Rwanda is not the only country in Congo's history that has disrupted the development of Congo, that has plundered Congo. It is not the only one. But in modern times, Rwanda and under General Kagame have certainly exploited the natural resources, with the added dimension that in trying to do that, it has fueled impunity in the region and in Rwanda itself. Later on, I'll be commenting on how the things that General Kagame and his army do in Congo are a reflection of what they do in Rwanda. Because domestic policy, as people who have studied and practiced diplomacy say, it's your domestic policy that actually drives your international policy, your foreign affairs, your diplomacy. And so this exploitation of natural resources from the days of Congo Desk, and we shall have another talk specifically on the illegal exploitation of natural resources of Congo by Rwanda, which has benefited General Kagame and a few people around him. The few generals like James Kabarebe, the Dan Munyuzas, the Jack Nzizas, and others who are associated in that, who have been implicated in that Congo. But of course, now there are new generals who have been trying to do that. And that is partly what is fueling that conflict. So to go back to what I was saying, so that was the time when Rwanda had to fight Angola, Namibia, and Zimbabwe. And then, of course, under international pressure, Rwanda was forced to withdraw its troops. And in 2013, and same M23, that's what happened. Under pressure, they had to abandon Goma and accept the losses after losing so many men, so many Rwandan troops, and so many Banyamulenge. And then now...
In 2012, when M23 withdrew from the Eastern Congo, it was after the troops of South Africa and Tanzania were deployed in the area.
Precisely. Yeah. It was, at that time, it was the standby force, which, of course, Minister Biruta mentioned in this letter. It was the standby force that essentially forced Kagame to lick his wounds and accept that. And not only that, I do have credible information that it took also a phone call from President Obama, then President Obama of the United States, a call to Kagame to tell him that essentially he has to leave Goma. That's also what it took. So a combination of Tanzania and South Africa in the standby force and diplomatic pressure from no other than the President of the United States, Kagame had to lick his wounds and just accept the losses and go back. But of course, it took another decade since Kagame has tested the lucrative business of illegal exploitation of Congo. He's like he's somebody who does business, and his business plan has served him well, only that his business plan is theft. It has served him well, and it's an addiction he cannot let go. In a way, Kagame is tied to Congo to the extent that I cannot see, and I'll come back to that in my conclusion, I cannot see Kagame abandoning his schemes in Congo unless he's completely and decisively defeated in Congo, and that defeat is linked with the actions of Rwandan people themselves to overcome the dictatorship of General Kagame. Because right now, he seems to indicate or to suggest that he's itching to take on a fight with Congo. Congo of then is not the Congo of now, because Congo, especially under President Tshisekedi, give him credit, he has been able to galvanize Congolese people to refute and accept that Kagame has to do whatever he wants in the Congo, and that they have to mobilize to actually resist the actions of Kagame in the Congo. Diplomatically, I think the problem of Eastern DRC is now more understood in diplomatic circles than it was then. In political terms, I think more Congolese people, generally, even those who don't see eye to eye with the internal politics of the Congo, at least they agree on one thing, that General Kagame's actions in the Congo are a menace and a hindrance to their lives. Look at how many people have been killed in the Congo. Some people have always put it at 6 million. Look at how many people have been displaced right now in millions. Look at the entire economic disruption that has taken place. And now, in addition to all that, Kagame thinks he can take on South Africa and Tanzania and Congo and Burundi at the same time. Now, if you may ask me, is it possible that Kagame can genuinely take on South Africa, Tanzania, and Burundi and Congo? Absolutely no. I think this might signify the beginning of the end of the Kagame regime, because he has exceeded his ambitions. I think have exceeded his powers to achieve some of the objectives, even limited ones that he might have. And so Kagame is contending with a very serious development in the region. And I think this serious development is the one that is causing a lot of panic, as this letter shows from Minister Biruta. And so many people would be asking, what happens next? What happens next? On the one hand, Kagame is somebody who can lose so many men, Rwandan troops who are fighting in the Congo, as it is happening right now. All the reports that we have on a daily basis are indicating tremendous losses by the Rwandan army that is deployed in the Congo. But it's like throwing, more money to a failing business. If a business is failing, if a business is becoming bankrupt, as we have seen world over, including here in the United States, a company might exist for even 100 years, and now because times have changed, it will run bankrupt. Great companies have run bankrupt. And often the trajectory is, you see yourself that you can no longer sustain the business, you keep on throwing more money. So it's like Kagame, who's fighting, whose military strategy has no end in sight. Because if you might recall Sixbert in the beginning, we used to say, when this round of fighting began 2 years ago, we say, what is Kagame up to? Capture Bunagana, and then what? Capture, even if you capture Sake, and then what? Capture hills in Masisi, and then what? What? And we, in our Kinyarwanda broadcast, we argued that Kagame is indeed the old general who always fights the last war. Yes. General Kagame, General Kabarebe, all these generals under Kagame, Mubarak and company are always fighting the last war. They lose so many men. They keep throwing more men to the court. They lose men. They don't change the strategy because they have no strategy to change to, because the internal situation, domestic situation of dictatorship in Rwanda, lack of respect for human rights, closure of political space, frequent political assassinations, disappearances of people. Anybody who tries to say, oh, I'm a citizen of Rwanda, I would also like to be to compete in elections and become the president, as happened to many people that we're aware of, including Victor Ingabire and others. Others are kidnapped, the case of Rusesabagina. Others simply disappear. And if you asked me, if you had to take all these out of the equation, out of Kagame's equation of having DMA, having DMI, having the intelligence, having the resources that is plundering from Congo and plundering from taxpayers, poor taxpayers in Rwanda. If you took all these away from Kagame and you made him citizen Kagame, how many people in Rwanda would defeat him in general elections? Sixbert, how many people? I, for one, if you took away Kagame's army, you took his DMI, you took all this money that has plundered for people, from RPF, from the Congo, you deny him all these means of coercion, and it is citizen Kagame and citizen Rudasingwa. He will not survive. His presidency
that's for sure.
Survive.
That's for sure. He won't survive, and he knows he took power by arms, and he's governing by arms. He will keep the power by
Yes.
arms.
Yes.
That's
Or
his
if you
way
had to
of
match,
understanding.
or even the case of Victor Kagame, if you took away all these things that Kagame uses to beat people, into put them in jail, and of course Victor Kagame would beat Kagame by far in a presidential
I
election.
believe that anybody from opposition parties will beat him if there is a free and fair election in Rwanda.
And especially if you it's not even that anybody would beat him, but some person, some citizen of Rwanda who has the concerns of Rwandan people at heart, who wants to rectify all this damage that Kagame has imposed on the population of Rwanda and now imposes on the population of the region. Kagame has been involved in attempts to regime change in Burundi, if you might remember, in 2015, right? Kagame has engaged in regime change in Democratic Republic of Congo. He has removed one president, assassinated the second one. And right now, he has never abandoned.
He tried even a regime change in Uganda. He tried.
I was coming to that.
Yes.
So literally, Kagame has quarreled or fought literally every country in the region, even those that he has not fought, like Tanzania. You remember when Kagame said that he was itching to teach Kikwete, then President Kikwete, a lesson he will never forget. He was itching, saying that he's going to fight Tanzania.
Yeah, actually,
now of course,
he would be undercover somewhere and hit him in a way he will never forget. Yes. Yeah.
So one other thing I would like to comment on before you, if you may wish to ask me any other question, you might ask yourself, why did the MONUSCO fail after 20 years of investing almost $20 billion US dollars? And now, of course, it's on the way out. You may ask, why did the East African force fail after deploying? And then, of course, in this letter, I've seen Biruta is complaining that it was dismissed because he didn't want to fight. Of course, if a force of that nature, which is very costly, you have men who have gone to Eastern Congo, there's a conflict. What are you there to do? So why did the East African force fail? And under what circumstances would this it's kind of a preemptive warning or advice one would give to the SADC force, the South Africans and the Tanzanians, that unless you link what is happening in the eastern part of Congo to what is happening in Rwanda and treat them accordingly, you are bound to fail. Because Kagame's policies in Rwanda, the way the crisis of governance in Rwanda, the way he runs Rwanda, the suffering of the Rwandan people as we speak, all these things that are taking place in Rwanda are very much related to what Kagame is doing in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he seems to argue that he's there to defend it, to fight FDLR, but that's nonsense. That's not why Kagame is in the Congo, because Rwanda, which has 13 million people, if you are going to Congo to defend the Tutsis of Congo, why can't you protect and give rights to the Tutsis in Rwanda? Or why don't you give all Rwandans the same rights, Hutus and Twas and everyone the same rights? Why would you have to go to other places and to look as if you are the king of all the Tutsis of this world? I don't know even how many Tutsis there are, or how many Tutsis, those who believe they are Tutsis first and Rwandan second, or Hutus first and Rwandan second. For me, I'm proud to be Rwandan first and Tutsi second. Being Tutsi is my private affair here at the Rudasingwa household. But the one thing I have in common with you, Sixbert, is that we are Rwandans. And Kagame cannot claim to go to defend Tutsis of other nations when in fact the Tutsis in his own country are suffering and Hutus in his own country are suffering.
I think we got a technical problem and I missed the last part of your...
Yeah, I was just saying that Kagame has made himself the defender and protector of Tutsis in the region, in the world, when in fact Rwandans, including the Tutsis and the Hutus and Twas in his own country, are suffering. So you don't have to show your empathy and your compassion to other people when in your own country you are doing precisely the same things that you are accusing other people, in this case, accusing Congo, accusing President Tshisekedi, President Ndayishimiye of Burundi. In the past, of course, he has accused the President Museveni of Uganda. He has accused Tanzania for being pro-FDLR. And now, of course, in this letter, you saw Sixbert, he's accusing the SADC force of working with FDLR and ADF and FLN and, and that it's Congo that has a belligerent, he's accusing SADC of having a belligerent posture. Who now has a belligerent posture in the region for the last 30 years? So I could go on and on, but I just wanted to say these things that it certainly is a very, very dangerous moment in the Great Lakes region of Eastern Central Africa, because the combination of the domestic crisis in Rwanda, the regional crisis, both in economic, diplomatic, military, and other dimensions, are going to create a scenario where we may witness another third African World War.
Thank you, Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa. When we read the two letters the Kagame regime had sent, the first one to the UN Security Council, asking not to support, asking that the MONUSCO doesn't support the SADC troops in the Congo, in Eastern Congo. That was the first letter. The second one is this one. He has sent to African Union, asking not to back or to support this force. In both letters, Kagame is threatening the region, but how much could he do? Is he militarily capable of defeating a regional force supported by UN and African Union? Is he capable of that? In some interviews from the Rwandan deputy spokesperson, I heard that they've got arms, enough arms to defend. Even Kagame was saying that he will defend himself and he knows what he will do. But is he really capable of doing that?
No, he's not. In the long term, a country is able to sustain a long fight because of many reasons. Among them, it's not the size of the army or what ammunitions that you have. We were told in the days of RPF before we went to war in the 90s, having studied guerrilla warfare and war in general, we're always told that the greatest thing that is able to give you the capacity to win in a conflict is having a just cause. So on that, number one, Kagame fails flat. He does not have a just cause because a war of plunder, a war of killing ordinary Congolese people, not forgetting, by the way, we didn't mention that in that first war and the second Congo war, and throughout, not only have over 6 million people died in the conflict, but also from what we read and what we know in the mapping report of 2010, which has been shelved, and which, by the way, is the background that partly informs Kagame to keep war making in the Congo, especially when President Tshisekedi started raising the issue of Kagame's officers who are implicated in the acts of genocide, as per mapping report of 2010. Every time you raise such issues, like raising the issue of the killing, the shooting down of the plane in which the president of Rwanda, Juvenal Habyarimana, and the one of Burundi, Ntariamira, every time you raise the issue of the plane, as you remember, Sixbert, Kagame gets jittery. If you raise the issue of the mapping report and himself and the officers who are implicated in the acts of genocide, according to that mapping report, Kagame gets very jittery. And so right now, he thinks that he should perpetuate the war because he has a lot to, in addition to the illegal exploitation of resources, but he has also that cover-up to make sure that it happens. So if you don't have a just cause, number two, what is the size of the economy that supposed war making for Kagame? In the past, the illegal exploitation of resources of Congo, the corrupt practices of Kagame and Crystal Ventures and other businesses that Kagame and his family have amassed in Rwanda have made sure that they always have enough cash to support the assassinations abroad, to support war making, but it's mainly from the pocket of what you've stolen from Congo that is able to use in supporting that. But when you perpetuate conflict, even that will become less and less, because I don't think that right now he's able to go and steal as much gold, steal as much diamond, steal as much quota as he used to in the first Congo War. You remember in the first Congo War, literally Rwanda was running Congo. Kabarebe was the de facto, guy who was running, the military guy who was running Congo, and that's what the Congolese were rebelling against. So right now, he's not getting as much, and Rwanda is still a poor country. That is the bottom line. It depends on the handouts from the United States, from the World Bank, from the IMF, from these blackmail deals that Kagame has made with the British, of saying, "Oh, bring me all the people that you do not want, and give me money." And of course, Kagame knows that he won't even do that. They won't even, if you're not giving rights to your people, you won't give them to foreigners. And so you don't have a just cause. You have an economy that wouldn't be able to support the war for a long time. Number three, you have men. War in Rwanda is war in the Congo and war in general is a very unpopular thing, contrary to what we see the bravado of Kagame and company and Kabarebe with these nonsensical speeches that Kabarebe makes, saying how they are going to fight, and Mubarak saying how they are going to export war into other countries. That's what they say. But the fact is, the attrition rate, the rate at which Rwandan troops are dying, cannot be sustained. Each one of us knows some family that has lost some people recently. They bury them under the cover of the night. You open economy and see what is going on, in addition to others they just abandon on the fields. So the attrition rate for men is so high that at some point, Kagame would have to swallow his pride and figure out how to cut his losses, as he has done in the past. Diplomatically, Kagame cannot sustain a war because for the first time, you can see that Africa and the region are rising to the occasion to see that Kagame is a cancer in their midst. That unless and until they approach surgically this cancer in the midst of Central and East Africa, Kagame will continue to be that kind of menace. But they are waking up. The fact that South Africa and Tanzania, and we didn't even mention, are you still on, Sixbert? I cannot hear.
I'm now back. The connection was very poor. Yeah.
Yes.
But now I can hear. Yeah.
Yes, I was saying that.
Yeah.
Did you hear the point I made that diplomatically he's isolated?
Yes.
Both by Africans, and this attempt, even for SADC and Congo to go to the AU, is simply a signal that Africa is waking up to see the dangers that Kagame poses to the region. And lastly, on the diplomatic side, a factor which I must comment on, maybe I'll have another time in another conversation, we shall talk about the role of the United States of America in supporting General Kagame's government regime for all these years, for almost 30 years now, but which now has become a burden on the US government. And they too, because when they look at Congo, they see South Africa coming to support Congo, they see Tanzania coming to support Congo, they see a Congo that is a little more robust in diplomacy, politically united against Kagame's actions in the Congo. A country like the United States has to make a decision, and I think it's making that decision that even its strategic interests, its national interests, are more protected working with Congo, working with South Africa, working with Tanzania, working with Malawi, and figuring out, and in its statements, you've seen some of their statements, they certainly have been a little more bold than they have been in the past, which means that the climate is changing, even for the United States. And so for Kagame, he's sitting now thinking that things will be better for him, but increasingly he behaves like Sixbert is, I don't know how it is classified, but it's some kind of bird. It's called an ostrich. When you chase an ostrich in the desert, at some point, it thinks that by burying its head in the sand, that the enemy has gone away. Of course, you come and find it where its head is buried. But that's how Kagame is behaving. And I think the posture of the United States is also going to be very decisive. They have not abandoned him as yet. Britain has not abandoned Kagame as yet. Probably they will be the last one to abandon him when everything is clear that.
But I believe that even if they haven't abandoned him yet, it will be very hard for them to provide arms because he has been threatening. He has been threatening the region, and at the same time, he has been parading some more machinery, including air defense and other military equipment. Could he really finance a short or long-term all-out war effort?
No, he can't.
Is he economically able to do that? And then
and diplomatically to do that.
Are those foreign powers who are still keeping a blind eye, could they provide military equipment to him in this context? I don't think so.
Well, the people, the merchants of, I call them the merchants of death, for no better word, the people who sell weapons to any dictator so that he can kill his own people. They are simply selling death to the dictator. And there were always people who are sharks who want to make money out of all that. But one thing I'm sure about, if you look at that question of the cause, number one, that Kagame does not have a cause to go and cause the kind of damage, continue to cause the kind of damage he has been causing in Congo. He does not have the diplomatic support for his actions in the Congo. He does not have the economy to support a long-term project of fighting countries that are much bigger and having more resources than his. Congo, South Africa, Tanzania, Malawi, combined, they have certainly more resources. And the fact that you cannot keep on thinking that the men you use on an illegal war, on an unjustified war, are just expendables, that you can have as many killed as possible and then continue fighting. So those are some of the factors I can see that Kagame is at the very end. I call them end game strategies. Kagame has tried every possible combination of so-called strategies in the Congo, but right now he's running short of options. The one thing that will tip Kagame into history as a loser, because that ultimately will happen, is Rwandan people now becoming more courageous to stand up to him. Because all these other forces, foreign external forces, have failed in Congo, East African, MONUSCO, and as I said, this is like an advice to Congo and to the SADC force, that unless they link their actions in Congo with ways and means, innovative ways and means of supporting change in Rwanda, the ghost of Kagame will continue to haunt them for a very long time to come. You cannot simply look at Kagame in isolation in Eastern Congo without looking the damage has inflicted on the Rwandan people for the last 30 years. So I think that's one thing they will have to think in their planning. They have to figure out, because simply saying that you're going to knock Kagame out of Sake, and prevent him capturing Goma, get him out of Bunagana and all that, and that he will come and fold his arms in Rwanda, that would be wishful thinking. I think MONUSCO has seen that. The East African force has seen that. All these forces that countries has fought in the past, from Angola to Zimbabwe and Namibia now, South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania. He has fought the Ugandans, he has fought the Burundians. To imagine that Rwanda will be, that Kagame will be contained within Rwanda is actually wishful thinking. So I think the region needs to be more innovative and think of how to link the resistance in the Congo with resistance within Rwanda for political change, for peaceful political change. I'm always shocked when Kagame says, like it's said in the letter, that, Congo does not want to negotiate with M23, well knowing that the ones he's calling M23 are actually Rwanda's forces. That's how Kagame sometimes comes across. His actions, I would call some of the actions of Rwanda are actually foolish. I don't want to call Kagame foolish, but I would say the actions are foolish, because if you are asking Congo to talk to the people who are fighting Congo, even though that is not true, because Congo is fighting Rwanda, why you, Kagame, wouldn't you talk even to people who are not armed, who are telling you that the house is on fire, Rwanda is on fire, and for a long time, and that why can't you talk to them just as President Habyarimana talked to you when you are a rebel, when you are armed? But the people whom I have heard, although I'm not one of them, I haven't asked to talk to Kagame because it would be futile. Kagame made a deal with Habyarimana and killed him the following day. Every deal that Kagame has made in the so-called interest of peace, he has gone back with the other hand and destroyed it or killed the very person, the very people that he made a deal with. But the people who keep on saying, oh, maybe we should, which is very legitimate, that Rwandans should come amongst ourselves, although we failed in 1994, and we failed because of RPF and Emerende, governing Emerende. Those are the two forces that wrecked the Arusha peace process. Why can't we come together and figure out the future of Rwanda that is free of war with the neighbors, that is free from civil war amongst ourselves, that is free from genocide, that gives a chance to young people to live as long as they can, and gives us a chance to reconcile amongst ourselves and reconcile with the region. Reconcile with the region, because right now, Kagame has provoked the hatred that he says that FDLR and others have exported to other countries. He too has exported all that. And he's the cause of that. He's partly the cause of that. And so, but unless there is an internal process in Rwanda and the resistance in Rwanda against the regime that links up with the resistance within the region against the problems that Kagame causes to the region, we are going to be perpetually at war in that region. And that is my fear, that as we speak, the momentum is growing for that regional conflict. Unfortunately, you can start a war, whether national or regional, but you never know how it's concluded and who will be present at the end of this regional war. And I would hazard to speculate that once this regional war gathers momentum, at the end of the day, at the end of it all, Kagame will no longer be the president of Rwanda.
Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa, thank you so much indeed for your contribution. That's a very big prophecy. I will call it a prophecy because all the odds are clear that if Kagame continues, this will bring his regime to the end. Let's slowly head today's program to a close and continue next Monday. But a last comment before we close. Is General Kagame afraid?
Very much so. Kagame is by nature, I've worked with Kagame for a long, long time. Part of what drives Kagame, which many people may not know, is that he's inherently a very insecure man. There isn't any amount of money you can give to Kagame that will make him secure. There isn't any amount of political power, authority you can give him that would make him more secure, because he has it all. He has all the money. He has the government. He is the government. Rwanda is him. I think you people who speak French once, I forget exactly who said, but l'État c'est moi. You remember who said l'État c'est moi? The government, it's me.
I think that was Louis XIV, the 14th, Louis XIV.
Yes.
The King of France.
And so
the King of France.
Yes. So
Louis
Kagame,
XIV.
for some of us who worked close to Kagame, you always watched him, and he hides behind a cloak of secrecy. It's like he's behind an impregnable fortress. You cannot prod it to really read him, and he prefers that people cannot access him entirely like that. But I, for one, maybe with a bit of the little I learned in the medical school as a doctor, I always looked at him as a very inherently insecure man. And so, but he's an insecure man who go to great lengths to inflict damage on other people because it gives him a high. You remember every time he has killed somebody or put somebody in jail, he brags about it. And of course, we've also become a clapping nation. You find all these excellencies, ministers, and pastors, and the clergy, and of course the population, the crowds that they go to get from the villages to come in the stadium, and they clap when he brags about killing people, or about imprisoning people, about doing whatever he wants in the Congo. And so it's partly a fear-driven man. He's an insecure man who is driven by fear to keep on doing the same, and often actually believing or maybe deceiving people that he expects different results. Right now, he's in the Congo, in Eastern Congo, doing exactly the same things he's been doing for the last 30 years. And he believes he can get different results. And he's attention-seeking kind of man. He's a man who seeks attention for especially through doing wrong things. He knows that if he has another one in Eastern Congo, everybody will be trafficking to Kigali. You know, Kigali is now like a mecca, maybe less so than in the past. But people come to him, they say, ceasefire, get out of Congo. Actually, Kagame gets a thrill out of that. But I think he has overextended himself. He has overreached. The right word like happened to all these big powers in the past, and Rwanda has never been a big power, but he has overreached. He has reached the limits of how much he can continue to rely on his fear and the fear he inflicts on other people, his insecurity, to continue doing the same things that he has always done. But the one thing I know that is bound to happen is that Kagame has certainly reached a limit, and I think taking on in the current round of conflict that has started, taking on South Africa, Tanzania, Malawi, Congo, and all the diplomatic kind of pressure that is on him.
Burundi is a serious challenge.
And Burundi,
yeah,
yes.
It's a very serious challenge.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I keep on, yes. So when you see this combined military force and the way that Congo is more mobilized than before, and the diplomatic pressure that is on Kagame, he has overreached. And the actions that he takes from now onwards are likely to be suicidal. Number one, he's likely to say, okay, now let's double up and escalate. Let me now send in and deploy all my force against Congo and against SADC. That certainly would be suicidal. But the other one, Kagame being Kagame, and especially listening to some of the people that have advised him in the past and have supported him, especially the Americans and the Americans and the British, they might now pull the plug and say, "Come on, Kagame, it's time up." Despite what Kagame says, I know him and have worked with him in crisis times in the past. When the people from this country spoke, he took it very serious. But of course, they have been ambivalent because United States has all these client presidents and client states all over the world. That is how big powers have always acted. And as long as you are on their side, they won't rock the boat. But Kagame keeps on talking about raising the cost in the region. But you see, he also raises the cost for other people who in the past have supported him. The question is, to what extent would... Are you still on?
I'm now back, but the connection was lost.
Yes, at some point,
you were saying that
Kagame also
he
raises costs.
Yeah, you said
he raises the cost for
I
other
lost
people.
The connection when you were there.
Yes, he's raising the cost. He says he's raising the cost for the region. He once told it to Museveni of Uganda. He says it to Congo. He has said it about Burundi. But he forgets that the people who have always supported him, like the United States, also are not going to entertain all the costs that Kagame keeps on raising for them. Yes, you are our guy in the region, but at some point you become a burden. And a friend of today can be an enemy of tomorrow. So he cannot take it for granted. He keeps on raising costs, and those costs can go to even an ally like United States, and at some point they may be forced to dump him. And it won't be the first time. They have done it in history. And every country has, remember the saying that there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, there are only permanent interests. And the interests of the United States in the region are much bigger than Kagame probably is able to appreciate.
Right, because of the connection problem, we should head to a close and continue next Monday. This is the English service of radio television Ishakwe, the voice of Ishakwe Rwanda Freedom Movement, a Rwandan opposition organization in exile. We are broadcasting from Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, and this program is brought to you by Sixbert Musangamfura, and our guest today is Dr. Theogene Rudasingwa.